Hi everybody, welcome back to Geezer Rider. Today's episode is a follow-up on the heated gear segments. If you haven't reviewed those videos yet, it might make a little more sense to you if you go over them first and then come back to this. What I have is some updates and some corrections to some previous assumptions that I made, all about transparency and keeping it real and honest. You know, if I said something was good and I find out it's bad, I'll let you know. If I say something was bad and I find out it's good, I'll let you know. So let's dive right into it. First and foremost is probably the what I wanted to do for powering my heated gear, my 12-volt battery powered heated gear, you know, off the bike itself, the bike's power, the bike's battery, 12-volt battery. My bike has a cigarette lighter adapter built into the fairing, and Synergy had this cigarette lighter adapter with an internal fuse and obviously a power port. There were two things wrong with this, and this may be just a limitation of this particular style, but it's something for you to look out for in other models. First and foremost was that the wire is coated with, instead of a traditional insulator, it's kind of a hard vinyl insulator, and what that means is it doesn't have a lot of give. So when you go to expand it, it just snaps right back. I mean, I could probably deliberately stretch it out to the point of possibly damaging the internal wires to get it longer. And this is only going to be obviously exacerbated when it's cold, right? When wires get cold, they get stiffer. So that was the first thing. If I had a distance issue from the fairing to where I plugged into my jacket or pants or what have you, or my heat controller, it turned out the distance really wasn't an issue for me, but it might be for some others, or when you turn the handlebars if you don't have a fixed fairing, for example. But the big detractor here was the fit into the cigarette lighter adapter. So it was twofold. One was the depth that went in and how much was hanging out. Obviously, this is a pretty long connector, and the spring tension on the center post there's probably 3 times the amount of spring tension on this center post than needs to be here. And what that means is this thing was constantly backing out of the socket while I was driving. This was annoying on two fronts. One, obviously, I lost power to my heat controller, which means that, you know, I would have to plug it back in, and you usually realize that it came unplugged if you can't see the light while little LED light while you're riding, which was kind of difficult to view because of this little raised area behind. It's supposed to help you pull it out. But the other thing was the heated pants that I bought had their own integrated heat controller, and they did not remember the temperature setting. So when you plug the power back in, the pants were off, and when you went to power back on, you had to cycle through the settings to get to the heat level that you wanted. So long story short, for me, this did not work out. I had high hopes. I also found it kind of annoying having it slapping on the tank, you know, going from the fairing to back. I'm a little finicky about things, a little OCD about things and the way things look, and it just wasn't the right look and fitment for me. So what I did wind up doing, and this was actually an add-on buy, most of the heated gear that you'll buy that wires into your 12-volt system will come with something like this. And there's a couple of ring terminals to connect directly to your battery. There's an inline fuse. They usually give you a couple extra fuses of varying capacities, different amperages, and then obviously the plug end, which you would plug your heat controller or your gear into. So I pulled the seat off the bike, hardwired one in. It's hanging out the side under the seat. That too is unsightly a little bit, but it's not in the way. And I find that it's a quicker disconnect when I come to a stop or something like that. So that's one big correction on previous assertions or assumptions about the way I would be doing things. The other was the heated insole versus the sock. It's not that the heated insole didn't work at all for me, but the boots that I had were too porous or too ventilated, and only the bottom of my foot was staying warm. So I have two things to consider. The first is getting obviously an insulated, more fall winter oriented boot, and then deciding if I want to get a sock. My concern about the sock is walking on the heating elements. They're really not meant to be walked around in all day. You might need to, if you're getting off and walking around a rally or something or doing activities, you might want to consider a change of footwear when you get where you're going. If you just need to get off the bike to get gas or, look over scenic overlook for a couple minutes, that's probably substantial. So I'll look into that a little more and I'll provide a follow-up on that. The layers versus relying on power. Obviously, you don't want to have so many layers on that you can't put your arms down like the kid in the Christmas movie. But you don't want to ever be solely reliant on your heated gear to provide you the heat you need in case you ever have a problem. You break down and it's cold out, etc. You get caught overnight somewhere. You want to have enough layers or carry extra layers on the bike. That's up to you. Just remember that the heating elements are designed normally to go as close to your skin as possible, and then you put layers over top of that. So rather than, if you're going to do that, rather than have a jacket and trying to put something over top of a heated jacket, you would get a jacket liner. So it's, almost like a long sleeve t-shirt material that has all the heating elements, and then you put your layers on top of that. The nice thing about that is you can use all your other jackets with it. Kind of nice for those days in the fall where it's warm during the day but then gets cold at night. You can have your regular jacket over top of it, zip up all the vented openings, and then have the heated liner provide heat versus wearing your winter grade heated jacket. So think about that. Think about what's going to work for you. We talked about the hardwire in already. And I guess there's a big question about, right now it's August where I live, and I'm sorry, at this time, and where I live, we're in the middle of a heat wave, an ongoing heat wave. I think this is like week 3. We're in the mid 90s, high 90s, high humidity, kind of oppressive. So why the heck did I think to bring up heated gear? Now is the time that you want to start your plan anyway for your heated gear. Start looking at what you can spend, think about what you need, think about the kind of riding you think you'll be doing or now or in the future when you're going to take advantage of the heated gear. And the COVID has kind of messed up manufacturing and stuff and import-export. So this advice might not be correct for this year, but would probably be more correct once everything gets sorted out as far as all that's concerned, in that this time of year is normally when old model line items, not bad, not antique, not degraded or anything, just old, just not the newest, latest, greatest, goes on sale, slightly discounted. And I'll give you a case in point. I talked about the heated socks a little bit earlier. Gerbing has a prior generation heated sock that, they never made any apologies for. It's a great sock. It's running now for about $79. It was, I think, originally, $120, something like that, for a pair of these heated socks that you would have to plug into a heat controller and everything. They're not rechargeable batteries or anything. Their new generation socks are, if you can find them that cheap, about $99. So you stand to save $20 getting this older generation. Obviously, that supply is limited because they're not making it anymore. It's just whoever happens to still have a pair in their warehouse, and you can get it, possibly pick it up for free shipping. So that's a reason why you would be thinking about this time of year to be doing your research and maybe even start buying a couple of these items. The other is the ability to work in your shop, your garage, or on your bike or whatever, and get your power situated before you want to go riding with the gear. So if you can get that pre-run and decide which side you want it on, coming out the left side of the bike, the right side of the bike, are you going to hide it behind a side cover? Where's it going to come out? Do you want to take it off each year? Are you going to put an inline connector somewhere so you can take it off in the summer months? What have you. So a good time to look into all that. I did mention the heated pants that I reviewed in the other video. Go back and look into that. They do have their own heat controller built in. I still think the price point was pretty good. There's a couple of things I want to nitpick on. And first and foremost is the length of the pant. So what I'll normally do is, if I'm a normally sized 32 length jeans, for example, I'll buy a 34 inseam length jeans for riding. So that means I have a little extra real estate while I'm riding and my knees are elevated. I ride cruiser style. So, kind of been at, not necessarily 90 degrees, but maybe, 90 or a little bit out in front of me, or if I'm up on highway pegs, obviously not in the wintertime too much, but, you're making sure that the pant leg is coming down over your boot cuff. The heated pants that I bought are not generous in length. I would say that they are either spot on the length they are advertised at, or maybe even come up a little short. And I think that's part of the issue I had with the heated insoles that I referenced earlier, where a heated sock would have kept my, my ankles, my calves a little bit warmer, versus, just the insole. So that was one nitpick about them, but, nothing that can't be compensated for with a higher shank boot, or an additional sock over the heated sock, etc. But the other item was what I mentioned, was the built-in heat controller. That I find very annoying, that it won't retain the setting, and if power is broken for just a minute, you have to start all over again. So if you are running the heated controller that has the remote control like I had and everything, you cut power to the bike, obviously the heat stops, and you're going to unplug the cord anyway, most likely to put gas in the bike, or go inside and pay for it, what have you. But when you come back and you plug in and you start the bike up, it's back to the settings that you had previously. Nothing's changed. The pants you have to cycle through again. And the way the pants are, so if this is my two legs, the controller's on my left leg, and it's up here. And wearing a full face helmet as far back as the little button is that you have to hit and see the LED on it, so far back, wearing a full face helmet, it's very, very difficult to actually see that thing. And the way it cycles is high, it's off, high, medium, low, and then off again. So every time you turn it on, you have to cycle through all that, and it'll forget if there's any power blip. And obviously, like I said, this thing kept cutting out on me. So that's one part of that. And the other is, it did not have a outlet at the bottom of each ankle to plug in heated insoles or heated socks for whatever reason. I guess because it also comes with a very large and heavy lithium battery that you could run them off of, and they thought that would be too big a burden on the battery, so they didn't incorporate the wiring. So I've had to run a wire down each pant leg to the insoles, or heated socks if you wanted to. I don't know how much they saved by not putting that in there for you, so that you could hook up another power source other than a battery, or, didn't even have to run off their heat control. They just could put in a dead wire between the waistband and the ankles. So that is a workable solution. It's not uncomfortable to ride with or anything, but it is just something more you have to fuss with when you're getting dressed for the day, and make sure it's oriented right so it doesn't get the wires don't get routed near any areas that you prefer they weren't touching, if you know what I mean. So I'm not sure that I would recommend them if you were going to use heated footwear of some kind that had to be powered off the 12-volt system. And that leads me neatly into the other assertion that I had made, where the rechargeable battery systems with the little remote control key fob, I was kind of cautioning you to stay away from them, that they were a little untested. The major brands have all hopped on board with this en masse. So obviously it is now mature technology, and I recant my statement to tell you to stay away from that. What I would say is, look and scrutinize these operating hours where they're telling you you're going to get 19 hours of use, and it's a 3.7 volt battery, and it's it's the size of this little square here. That's probably a little over optimistic, and likely that is accounting for you stopping multiple times throughout the day. They're probably including a breakfast, lunch, and dinner stop in there, and assuming obviously that you're always on the lowest setting too. So please scrutinize those performance figures, and also look into and I think I did mention this in the earlier video, look into if they are going to be providing that battery down the road. What I would suggest is you buy a couple extra batteries while you can get them. In the old days, it makes sense to buy ahead with nickel cadmium or even nickel metal hydride, because they would go bad over time. They just didn't last forever. Anybody that's had a couple of cordless drills over the past 20 years knows what I'm talking about. But the lithium batteries, they hang around for a while. You do have to remember to cycle them through a charge. There's usually instructions on how to get the most life out of them. And that also means you can have a spare set that's always charged, somewhere on your person or on your bike, should you get caught and you have to go. Just realize that if you go that route with the rechargeable batteries and the key fobs, you're probably going to have, I haven't seen any yet where they have a full suit integrated into a single key fob, kind of like a garage door opener remote that can operate your lights in a couple of different doors. Right now, it's a separate key fob for each item. So you're going to have one for your jacket, you're going to have one for your pants, you're going to have one for your gloves, you're going to have one for your socks or your insoles. So that can be quite a bit to keep track of. And, while riding along, fumbling through, 5 different key fobs to find the one you're looking for because it's either set too low or too high, is certainly not a desirable situation from a safety standpoint or a convenience standpoint. So take a look into that. I think as these manufacturers continue to go down this line, it looks like there's a lot of focus there right now. Somebody's going to come out with a master remote, just like a universal remote for your TV and stereo and whatnot. There'll probably be some kind of a master remote either provided by the manufacturer or someone who's going to have their Shark Tank moment and invent one you can use. That would be definitely something worth having. So I hope you have some time before the cold weather gets here to get your cold weather riding gear in order. It sounds like, riding is going to be one of our little escapes that we can still do for a while with COVID still intruding in our life and in our enjoyment. So if you get your heated gear together, you extend your riding season and your personal enjoyment quite a bit longer. Ride safe. Namaste.